Hello, world, and welcome to Shaw Planet, April 19th, 2022. Spring is sprung. Hopefully, everybody's out there enjoying the great weather. And do not adjust your screen, do not adjust your set. This is, in fact, facial hair. And the last time I had facial hair was probably during COVID. I don't remember there being this many grays in it. So don't be surprised if this is probably the last time you see it for a long time until I get bored again. But why facial hair now? And how does this whole tie into our topic today, which is asset protection planning? Well, part of the reason you're seeing this facial hair right now, if not the only reason you're seeing this facial hair right now, is the two biggest critics of my facial hair happen to be in the Caribbean right now on a trip. My daughter and my wife are actually enjoying a mother-daughter spring break trip. Anya leaves for college soon, so we wanted to make sure we took advantage of every minute we get with her at that point too. So yeah, they're out there and they're having a great time. And where do asset protection attorneys like to vacation? Well, they're in St. Lucia right now. So we still, yes, we still see the facial hair. Yes, only for now. It's going. I promise it's not going to last forever. But where do asset protection attorneys like to go on vacation? Well, when you think of asset protection jurisdictions, you think of places like Nevis or the Cayman Islands or Mauritius. And that actually makes a lot of sense because those jurisdictions have traditionally have been tax favored jurisdictions. And they've also been strong asset protection jurisdictions. But if we kind of go back to sort of this Russian Ukrainian war that's in the news right now, and we think of how a lot of the oligarchs, I'm going to talk about oligarchs in a second, but how oligarchs have done their planning, we can learn something about asset protection from them. And again, I use all these news topics right now in current events to relate it back to education about your tax, your legal, your estate, your financial, your investment planning. But there's no disrespect at all, and my heart always goes out to those who are hurting from the war right now too. Incidentally, I didn't know what an oligarch was. My admission until I watched Inventing Anna. Inventing Anna, this series on Netflix. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody who hasn't watched it yet. I watch it. I suggest watching it. It's a nice guilty pleasure. But that's what I learned where your planning can be so basic. Why would you do your planning in the US when you could do your planning anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world? That is my Inventing Anna impression. I debated this morning for about an hour before I actually did my Inventing Anna impression. So yes, I'm available for parties. But Russian oligarchs are getting their yachts and their mansions seized by a lot of international or domestic, if they reside in a place where they allow these seizures, they're getting them seized, which means they're kind of losing their assets. They're going to get sued. There might be civil claims. There might be all this sort of stuff that's kind of going on right now. So if you think about asset protection planning as a timeline, let's talk about when we do asset protection planning, and let's talk about what it is you can do about asset protection planning, or what you can do for asset protection planning. So think of this timeline, right? And we're not going to talk about the oligarchs for a second, but let's talk about average folks, if you will. You start a business, or you buy an investment property, or you have a teenager who happens to drive, and you want to protect your assets. Think of the timeline, okay? So let's use the real estate option. You purchase a property, you take out a loan, you close on the loan, you buy the home, you get a tenant, and that tenant slips and falls, and the insurance company denies you, you get a judgment against you, and you lose the judgment. And now they want to go after you for all of your assets. There's this timeline. When's the best time to do your asset protection planning? Here. Every step along the timeline, when you go further and further along, you are diminishing your chances of success with your asset protection planning. You have to buy your flood insurance before it rains, right? Unfortunately, as attorneys on our legal side of the practice, we get a lot of our asset protection conversations here. Hey, I'm already getting sued, or somebody already slipped and fell, or my business looks like it's going down and I'm going to be potentially on the hook for some personal guarantees. You want to start the asset protection here. Now, back to the oligarchs. A lot of these oligarchs are getting their assets seized, and they might be calling folks saying, hey, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? But there's one in particular, Alisher Usmanov, who basically was the fifth richest person in Russia. He actually did his irrevocable trust planning in 2006. Now, we don't know what kind of trust he did. We don't know where he did them, but he did his trust planning in 2006. And now he doesn't own those assets. So timeline is important. He did his planning back here. He might have done it after he had some assets, but I'm not saying be Alisher, but from an asset protection perspective, this is probably something that we can learn from him too. So that's the when. Now, what do you do? Here's the thing. You don't need an attorney. You don't need an advisor to do asset protection planning. You could just take the stuff that you have and just give it to somebody else. Now it's not mine. And if it's not mine, well, then if I get sued, as long as I did it without the intention to do any sort of fraudulent conveyances or to evade a creditor, it should work because you sue me, you ask me what I have, I tell you I've got this stuff, whatever I gave away, that's not mine anymore. So asset protection planning works in that realm, but we don't always want to give our stuff to other people. So what we do is we create vehicles. Now we might actually create trusts. That might be one way to do it. We might create a barrier like an LLC or a corporation that separates us. Or we might actually take advantage of some of the statutory rules that we have out there. Certain asset classes give you asset protection by virtue of their legal construction or their legal structure. So things like 401ks or certain retirement plans are protected by a federal law called ERISA. There are certain types of vehicles like life insurance or annuities that have built-in asset protection planning. And then finally, yes, these trusts that we're talking about, we can create them in places like your state in which you live. I can create a trust for the benefit of my spouse and my kids, or just my kids, or just anybody else for that matter. And if I did it properly and it's an irrevocable trust, it's asset protected. Now, there are some states in the US that allow you to create a trust for yourself. It's a self-settled trust for the benefit of yourself. And those states offer you asset protection benefits. Timeline still applies, right? You can't do this as soon as there's a claim against you and then expect to be protected against that claim. It'll help against future claims, but it won't help against that claim. So that's important. So when it comes down to these entities, there's no one size fits all. Not everything is capable for fitting into every single one of these vehicles. So a lot of times on the golf course or at a cocktail party or at a neighborhood or a blog post is going to say, hey, do this, do that. It may not apply to your situation. If you've got a lot of money in your retirement accounts and you want to move it into an irrevocable trust, you might have a little bit of a challenge with that, especially if you're not willing to pay all the taxes there too, right? So a lot to learn from today about when to do your asset protection and how to do some of your asset protection. Yes, I do a terrible inventing Anna impersonation, but hey, you got to hear it, right? And then finally, just know that when it comes to planning, it's always better to do it sooner than later. I will be signing off without facial hair next time is how I'm going to appear. Obviously, if I get enough comments, I might be convinced to actually hold on to it. But chances are it's probably gone because they're flying back tonight. All right, everybody, have a fantastic week. I hope to see everybody back next week. Be well, be safe, and enjoy the